Good morning, everyone. I hope that this video is clear. It's a little grainy, I know, but it's quite early here, which is sometimes the case when you're a dad. I've got a lot to do with my daughters today, so I wanted to post this video to talk a little bit about the TED Talk that I had you guys watch on sex and language. And that might seem like a strange topic. It might seem a little out of left field for many of you. You're like, I didn't sign up for a class on sex. I signed up for a class on anthropology. But the truth is, these two topics have been intertwined as long as this discipline has been around. Probably the first famous anthropologist was Margaret Mead. Who wrote a book called Coming of Age in Samoa, which dealt exclusively with the topic of sexuality, culture, and human beings. And so this is something that we have always talked about, the ideas of gender, the ideas of sexuality, the ideas of sexual orientation. These are old hat for us, to be perfectly honest with you. So I wanted you guys to watch this video because it's a wonderful example of how we often speak of sex and the ways in which language not just shapes the way that we think about things, but reflects the way that we think about things. And so when you and I speak of sex, as the TED Talk made clear, we often talk about the fact that we often express the fact that sexuality is seen as a metaphor for competition, that there is a winning team, that there is a losing team, right? We use sport to talk about these things. And so it's important to understand that this is not inherently the nature of sexuality. You might think, well, as many popular writers have tried to claim, right? Well, that's just how sex is. Men are the aggressor, women are, the passive recipient of male aggression, these kinds of things. Nothing can be further from the truth when we look at human sexuality across cultures. The truth is, in the majority of cultures, it's not seen in this way. It is something that women are, in fact, given title to enjoy sexuality, to pursue sex in their own right. And so they can be the aggressor. They can be the aggressor is a bit of a heavy term. They are allowed to be the offensive team, and given the metaphor that we've been using, and men are seen as the defensive team, right? And so this is not something that is universal at all, but rather it is a idea that is in the West, left over from the Victorian era, of how sex is supposed to be. This is reflected in our language, and our language then influences the way that we see this thing, right? So I think he has a wonderful metaphor to talk about sex today in America. As he says, we often talk about baseball, first base, second base, third base. We talk about, sitting on the bench and all of those kinds of things for the LBGT community. But nonetheless, I think it is a illuminating conversation to talk about how we have left sexuality in bygone eras, and our language reflects it, or at least our approach to sexuality. And that perhaps we should think about it in a new way. As he says, perhaps pizza. Now, I will grant you that both this TED Talk and my use of it is meant to be funny on a certain level. It is meant to be provocative on a certain level. It's meant to be fun on a certain level, right? How often do we talk about sex being about us getting pizza together and the ways in which we might mutually benefit from it? We might mutually enjoy it, those kinds of things. So yes, I will concede that it is meant to be fun, funny, and engaging. But at the same time, doesn't he bring up a good point? Doesn't he note the ways in which these things are quite antiquarian in their approach? Doesn't he have a solid point about the fact that if we use different words to convey them, we might approach them in a different mechanism? As I said, many cultures around the globe, you find the fact that people speak of sex differently, and the way that they speak of sex differently then influences the way that they approach sex differently. This is certainly one small example, but we could talk about a whole host of things, from sexuality to poverty to wealth to happiness, right? As you guys will learn about in the other video that I posted for this week, right? So I want you to maybe suspend judgment for just a moment, if you'll grant me, to think about it in a different way, and maybe even to talk about it in a different way, because I make no bones about the fact that you as college students are the most vulnerable population for sexual assault. I have been a sex educator for almost a decade. I have taught human culture and sexuality for many, many years. And I do believe that it is part of my duty as an educator to talk about the fact that we have so little understanding about what consent is, and we have so little respect for the need to teach young people about consent, that we have created a world in which, by some studies, almost 1 in 4 college women report having been the victim of sexual assault or an attempted sexual assault. So 25% of college women are dealing with trauma or the aftermath of trauma. And as both an educator and as a man and as a father, and hell, as a human being, I think all of us should stand up and discuss that. I think all of us should stand up and say that that is unacceptable. Too often in our culture, we are finding the fact that we're facing the fact that there is a pushback to say, well, it's not that bad, it's not that big of a deal, it isn't that serious, the problem has been overblown. The problem is not overblown. The problem is that serious. And any human being, man, woman, or otherwise, should address that. So I make no bones, as I said, about the fact that this is something I feel a responsibility to address, right? And as so long as we use language to talk about sex as the offense and the defense, so long as we use language to talk about sexuality as winners and losers, right? I truly believe that these things will continue on. Okay. So I think it's important that we have this conversation. Okay. I welcome comments on this. Please reach out to me. Please talk to me. I am hoping to soon add a class about human sexuality and culture here at HCC. I have taught it, as I said, many, many years. It is literally the most popular class in anthropology at the University of Florida. It is literally the most popular class in anthropology at Santa Fe College, where I taught. And so I'd like to add it to our curriculum here, to have these conversations, to engage you, and to welcome your perspective on it. Okay. So, thank you guys very much. I hope that you enjoyed that TED Talk. I hope that it engaged you, and I truly hope that you enjoy learning about Daniel Everett, a linguistic scholar of incredible renown. I cannot recommend his book enough, as I mentioned in this week's comments. Don't Sleep, There Are Snakes is a wonderful book. And I think that even if you are passingly interested in this class, even if you're just like, Josh, I'm trying to get an A, I promise you that you would enjoy his book and his life among the Pirahen, and what he has to teach us about not just happiness, but about language, about life, about community, about all of those things. So, thank you all very much. I hope you have a good rest of the day.